the other side with
And
the
Penn State
Ravens.
Blake.
And
Those are the three.
always.
In
always
an
Penn
eternal
State
struggle,
Blake.
Penn State Blake.
Zay Flowers in this game, obviously for the Ravens, while he got off to a hot start in terms of target share and scheme touches under Todd Monken here, Barry, it's dropped off a little bit in recent weeks, and I think the most important thing is he hasn't found the end zone yet.
No, he hasn't, but I think it's coming. Look, he's had double-digit targets 2 out of 4 games so far this season. Now, I get it. It's been a little bit feast or famine because he's been under 5 in the other 2 games. But for me, so far this year, he's got a 28% target share on the season. They are looking for him. Beckham is out. Bateman's banged up as well. Mark Andrews got off the schneid last week. I feel like this is the week where I think he can probably do it because, again, the Steelers' defense. As much as we want to bash the Steelers' offense, the Steelers' defense also not particularly good as well. I mean, you know, the Steelers are 26th against the pass through 4 weeks. We saw the Texans have their complete way with the Steelers' secondary. I don't think they're going to be able to get any kind of pressure on Lamar Jackson. They'll probably keep a spy in to try to limit his rushing ability. So I kind of like Zay Flowers as an upside wide receiver 3. I have him at wide receiver 28. I get it's been a little feast or famine, but I'm going to keep it open. I think he's a wide receiver 3 with his upside. Keeping it open.
I'm going to keep it open as well. I got him at wide receiver 31. And just to add to that, what you said about the Steelers defense, they've given up the 3rd most points to receivers in fantasy this year. We don't know if OBJ will come back this week, nor Rashad Bateman. And Lamar Jackson only threw 19 attempts in week 4. Now, part of that was because DTR was giving these guys opportunities for easy scores. So I don't expect that to happen again either. So, we sticking with them this week.
They'll try to play ball control. They'll try to hide Trubisky, is my I think. Don't you think? They may not work, but they'll try to, right.
People have tried to hide Mitch Trubisky for half a decade now. It's just kind of his existence. I think a sneaky problem for Zay Flowers is that Mark Andrews was back to being kind of Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews last week, where he was playing like the best tight end in football. But with Flowers, he is their number 1 wide receiver. And in theory, this offense is going to throw the ball more at some point. He's the most talented guy. Question for you, Matthew. If you had Najee Harris and Zay Flowers and you had to start one as your flex this week, who would you choose?
Zay Flowers.
Okay. Well,
I
no
just think
hesitation.
Who?
Najee or Zay?
Yeah, Zay.
I think that all Najee Harris bashing jokes aside, I'd rather have a piece of the Ravens offense than a piece of the Steelers offense. That, to me, Najee Harris is entirely touchdown dependent. And Zay Flowers can get there without a touchdown. We'd like a touchdown from him, but he can get there without it. Because, again, they're manufacturing touches for him. They're close to the line of scrimmage stuff. There's no passing game involvement for Najee Harris. So it's close because, you know, you'd probably, if you were pricing it, you'd probably have better odds on Najee Harris scoring a touchdown than Zay Flowers, right? But I'd rather be part of the Ravens offense than the Steelers offense at this point.
Yeah, and as inconsistent as Flowers has been, it's still 78, 62, 48, 56 yards. Like, he's still getting yards. It's just that the touchdowns haven't been there. He's been a bit reliant on big plays. The other thing with Zay Flowers, though, is that he's a rookie. He's played 4 games. He should get better as the season goes on.
I mean, again, for the season, Najee Harris is averaging 7.1 fantasy points per game. He's had single digit in 3 out of 4 games. So, again, to your point, like, Zay Flowers just 56, 40. Like, he's got a better chance at, double-digit points.
Agreed.
Speaking of touchdown dependent, you don't often hear that with a wide receiver, but that is Drake London right now, who has the Texans. It has not been pretty for Drake London in large part because of what he's dealt with in this offense. Lawrence, I mean, is there any way you can keep this one open? Because people drafted him to be much different than
let's be clear, Connor. They drafted him because Lawrence kept telling everyone how good Desmond Ridder was, and they believed in Desmond Ridder. They believed Lawrence. Drake London being on rosters and fantasy is entirely Lawrence Jackson's fault. At Lord Don't Lose, please let him hear it. If you're
you get to explain yourself.
I actually hear that after Zach Wilson's very competent performance on Sunday night, Taylor Swift actually gave the worst quarterback in the NFL a belt to Desmond Ridder, unfortunately.
Well, at this point, you cannot argue that. So last week I said this. About Jahan Dotson. Why would I start the wide receiver 75? Well, I'm going to say the same thing here for Drake London. Why would I start the wide receiver 55 in fantasy, right?
I don't believe he's scored in America this year.
Not to mention
he scored in London.
Right, correct.
Not to mention the Texans are second best against receivers in fantasy. 78 yards for Zay Flowers was the most they've given up to a receiver. Yep. Michael Pittman only 56 yards. George Pickens 25 yards. Christian Kirk 54 and Calvin Ridley 40. So I'm not starting a guy who averages 31.
In games in which he doesn't score a touchdown, and again, I don't believe he's scored a touchdown in America this year. He's averaging 2.6 fantasy points per game in games in which he doesn't score a touchdown. He's got a 50% catch rate this season. Maybe that's on him, or maybe it's just because Desmond Ridder just can't throw it anywhere close to him. Lawrence, I just have 3 words for you. I have 3 words for you and 3 words only for you. Heineke.
Those
are my 3 words.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. And this is,
I'm closing it out on Drake London, obviously.
Yeah, gotta close it out. I will say this.
My wide receiver 41, and that was being generous.
Yeah, same ranking, and that is definitely generous. Drake London was a couple of tippy toes away from coming down with a second touchdown in the second half, but he couldn't come down with it, so that would have boosted him a little bit. But I still would have closed it this week, even if he had that.
I'm glad you brought that up, Lawrence. I think you were the only person in America still watching that game after what Desmond Ritter subjected everyone to in the first half.
Well, he had a good second half. See, nobody knows that.
When the game
nobody knows that.
When the game
so,
was over.
Hey, we just like to work with what we saw last. Let's just head on into Houston.
I wouldn't be starting Drake London this week, but I would be buying low on Drake London because, again, it's like the Zach Wilson thing we talked about last week. Either Ritter is going to get better or he's not going to be the quarterback, and it's going to be Heineke. And Heineke showed in Washington that he can support fantasy wide receivers.
1,000%. Drake London, like all jokes aside, Drake London's a talented wide receiver. Like he's a talented young player. He's just handcuffed entirely by the slow-paced, run-first nature of this offense and a quarterback that just isn't there right now. Yes, Heineke will be inconsistent, but whether it's been Terry McLaurin or others, he has supported fantasy-relevant wide receivers. Like Heineke can throw. Like he's not scared to sling it.
Heineke's problem is he throws interceptions. That's his problem, which for fantasy purposes is kind of okay for your wide receivers. Ritter's problem is that he can't throw it to anyone, really, at the moment, outside of Jaguars.
I will say this, too, though Ritter did throw that good pass to Drake London where he didn't get the toes down, but he should have had 3 picks in the first half.
Yeah.
He had Mac Hollins deep. He underthrew it. Hey, who we got next?
Last one here, Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison kind of on a milk carton after no catches on 1 target last week against Carolina.
Yeah, it's tough. And look, I think that he was very dependent on big plays in the first couple of games, but his targets were going up. So I would just write this one off. Very weird game against Carolina. I think the Chiefs with the total that high, they'll need to throw. I still think he's the wide receiver too.
He only got 1 target in that game, but by the way, that 1 target, if you watch the game, like it was he was wide open and just Cousins missed him. Like Cousins hits him and it's 1 big play for 60 yards, which again, it's a little bit of his game, but again, like I think the narrative's slightly different on him. It's this game against the Chiefs is the highest over/under on the slate. Like I want as much of this game as possible. I'm keeping it open on Jordan Addison as well. I think he's, wide receiver 3-4 in that range with some upside. There's going to be some variance there, but again, I prefer him over KJ Osborne for the number 2 wide receiver on the Vikings.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm going to leave it open. Lazard and Garrett Wilson last week combined for 12 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown against the Chiefs. Like you mentioned, highest over-under 53. I'm going to leave it open as well.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.